Joining me now live is Anne Ruston, the Minister for Families and Social Services. Should the government just get on with it when it comes to Ballina and extend that support, Anne Ruston?
Well, I mean, obviously what we've seen happen over the last couple of days is that 3 areas have been, so I suppose, designated as the epicentre of these floods. I think they're probably the words that the media have used to describe, the ground zero impact that have happened in these 3 particular areas. And so what we've seen is that on the advice of agencies that some additional supports have been put into those 3 areas. But we need to be clear that all areas that have been flood affected have received or have access to the full range of disaster support measures that are available. And that might be, the $50,000 grants to small business, the $75,000 grants to primary producers, as well as the disaster recovery payments that are available to individuals of $1,000 for adults.
These are the extended ones we're talking about, though, and they feel like that those in Ballina feel that they're now missing out. This is not a situation, is it, where the government's favouring coalition seats?
Look, not at all. Not at all. The advice that we will continue to take and have been taking has come from the National Disaster Recovery Agency, or Resilience and Recovery Agency. Their initial advice was that the epicentre of these horrific floods, and can I just say and acknowledge the extraordinary trauma that the people of many communities across Australia have been through over recent days with these floods. But this agency is the one that's advising government, and they will continue as they make their assessment to make decisions about additional supports that may be needed in other areas. But right now, the decision was made because of the absolutely overwhelming catastrophic impact on the areas of Lismore and the Clarence and Richmond valleys, that these were the first areas that were seen as being the most affected, but that does no way go to suggesting that other areas have not been seriously affected.
When you look at the impact of these floods, described as once in a 1,000-year events, sadly, Minister, that's not going to be the case over coming decades, and scientists tell us that these sorts of events are more and more likely. In that scenario, how would you like to see your government, but other authorities at the state level and elsewhere, respond to this crisis to make our towns and our regions more resilient in the face of these devastating events?
I think, once we've dealt with the immediate impact of the initial recovery, which is obviously the number one focus of all governments and everybody right now, is we need to have a look at what is causing, the hydrological impacts, say, for instance, of a flood, and work out what are the kind of measures that can be put in place that will enable us to mitigate against the impact of those measures. And I think the most important thing that we do once we have got past the immediate crisis is to make sure that we understand why this particular event happened and what could be done in terms of engineering works or changes to design that would enable future people who are living in these areas to live with greater confidence. Because obviously what we want to do is to make sure that we do have communities that have the confidence that the kind of events that we've seen of recent days are not going to happen again.
A few other matters I want to ask you about. The defence announcement today, a big commitment, a boost to the workforce, but out to 2040. What do you say to the criticism that a lot of this stuff is all out in the distant future when the strategic reality demands enhanced capability now?
Well, of course, you have to start. And, with defence capability, particularly, when it comes to the machinery that sits behind it, not just the troops on the ground, is that these things don't happen overnight. They take a long time. And, what we have said, and our commitment over the term of this government has been a very strong commitment to defence spending and making sure that we've got the military assets, because the number one job of any national government is to keep its citizens safe, and our national security is an absolute priority for this government. But, it takes time to build up the Army, Navy and Air Force. It takes time to build military assets, but I think this government has shown an absolute unwavering commitment that we will support our military and we will keep Australians safe.
You are the Minister for Families. One thing that's really hitting families at the moment is cost of living pressures, certainly at the Bowser. There's a debate in the lead up to the budget about the beer tax or the fuel excise as well. Is the government open to looking at some of these taxes? I know there are a number of your colleagues at the Ginger Group calling for the beer tax to be reduced, but what about the fuel excise as well? I remember John Howard froze it many years back in an election year when it was approaching $1 a litre. Now it's upwards of $2 a litre.
Well, I mean, as you'd expect, I'm not going to be enticed into making commentary about the budget. But what I would say is that, yes, we do understand that cost of living pressures are something that is a big impact on families and people in Australia at the moment. I mean, obviously, the tax cuts that we've brought in over the recent years will make sure that there's more money in people's pockets, more of their own money in their pockets. But also we've got a number of other measures. Just on Monday, our childcare measures that came into effect, you know, on average $2,260 extra in the pockets of 250,000 families across Australia who've got more than one child in childcare. I mean, these are the real and practical things that we will continue to keep doing to make sure that cost of living pressures are alleviated where possible for Australians.